Hey everyone, Ferrariman601 here. Welcome aboard my Acela Express in Train Simulator 2014. Today we are going to do a passenger run from Trenton, New Jersey to New York Penn Station in New York City via Metro Park, Newark Penn. I don't know if we're stopping at the airport or not, but definitely Metro Park and Newark Penn. We are in Trenton right now. We're not at a platform. We're just sitting in the middle track here. So we're going to get ready to depart because we have 47.94 miles to Newark Penn. So yeah, that answers my question. We're not going to Metro Park. I should probably pay attention to my route. Alright, but as you can see, the Acela cab here, nicely detailed. 2 Amtrak trains coming through here. Alright, so in any case, reverse or 2 forward. Train brakes released. Off we go. Flip on our tilt control system so we can get the train to lean into the corners a little bit because we will be doing some pretty high speeds. I don't know if there are any procedures or rules about when you have to enable the tilt system or whatever, but I don't know. Whenever I know we're going to be doing speeds around, I don't know, above 40 miles an hour, I'm thinking it's a good idea to be running the tilt system. So yeah, totally breaking real world procedure here, and looking away from the windshield as I turn on the cruise control. I watched another video in which the person in my position was wondering if there is a hotkey for the cruise control. I don't believe there is. I haven't been able to find anything, so it looks like you've got to use the mouse, and in the Acela you have to look well away from the track in order to enable the cruise control, so be that as it may. The signals are all clear up ahead. And in 1 mile, the speed limit raises to 120 miles an hour, so we'll be really booking it, as we say in this part of the world. Speaking of this part of the world, I am from central New Jersey, so I'm actually quite familiar with the Northeast Corridor line. In particular, if I could speak this morning, where I come from, it's not quite the Northeast Corridor, it's another spur of it that runs by me, actually less than a quarter mile from my house. The tracks for the New Jersey coastline pass. It's a line mainly utilized by New Jersey Transit. I don't believe Amtrak uses it at all, but sometimes there are freight trains as well that pass through there, and they make an awful racket when they go by, so you can really tell the difference just by the sound in terms of the type of train that's passing by. This line does intersect, however, with the Northeast Corridor as we ratchet the speed up to 120 miles an hour. By the time, certainly, we get to Newark Penn, we will be intersected with the Northeast Corridor. The airport at Newark Airport, that is also on the Northeast Corridor line, because when I take the New Jersey Transit train into New York City from my local station, I pass by those stations as well on my way to New York Penn. Station platform up ahead. But no, I'm not quite familiar with this part of the line, the Northeast Corridor spur from Trenton. However, I am familiar with a lot of the areas that this line services. Obviously, Trenton, we have Metro Park, which is a big hub where different lines come together. Princeton Junction, for example. Metuchen. I went to school in Metuchen. So I've been to the Metuchen train station, all that kind of stuff. I have to say, none of the topography, well, I shouldn't say topography, it's more a matter of fine detail. The little details in terms of the scenery around the track is not quite, shall I say, high fidelity in terms of what these areas actually look like in reality. However, the topography is quite accurate. But you'll see when we get toward Newark, in terms of what it actually looks like. I mean, from our northbound perspective, you would look over to your right and you would see New York City over there. You don't see anything of the sort. There's no sense that you're approaching, you know, the biggest city in the United States. It just looks like farmland out on the horizon. So I definitely have to criticize Train Sim's realism there, but then again, I've never made a computer game, so I can only criticize so much. In any case, we're at our speed limit now of 120 miles an hour. You notice there's a lot of vibration going on here in the cab view. It doesn't seem to be influenced in any way, you know, whether or not I have the tilt enabled. Right now it's back to isolate, still moving around, back to tilt, still moving around, so I don't think that has anything to do with the amount of vibration I'm getting here. But at 120 miles an hour, I'm guessing that you're going to get some vibration on board a train. Just a thought. I've never actually ridden Acela myself, but I know people who ride it regularly, and they say it's actually quite a pleasant experience, so kudos to Amtrak, I guess. So in 1 1/4 miles, we're going to be slowing down to 110 miles an hour. So actually, we're just going to start throttling back and slowing us down, just using aerodynamics and gravity to slow this thing down. Assuming it's probably best that way. You don't really want to have to use the brakes. At this speed, I'd imagine the brakes would heat up really fast and probably lose responsiveness if you really needed them. So we'll just let Isaac Newton slow us down. Turn on the bell when we pass through this station. I don't know what all of these stations are called, and we're going too fast for me to read the signs, but these must be stops on whatever New Jersey Transit spur runs through here. Or maybe local Amtrak service, I'm not sure. If you do know, comment please. One thing that is notably absent from the Acela, at least in Train Simulator, I'm not sure if this is the case in reality, but a lot of trains have this alerter system. It's a system that it does what it says it does. It alerts the engineer, make sure that he's not basically asleep at the wheel, as it were. It will, what I've read about it, it will basically pick a set interval from when the last control input was detected from the engineer, and then it will sound an alarm after a certain amount of time. I think it's something like 30 seconds. At which point the engineer has to manually answer the alarm. He has to disable it. He has to push a button or flip a switch, whatever it may be. But the Acela here doesn't have such a system. I haven't moved to control in over a minute, and there are no alarms going on here. Nothing at all. It's kind of interesting. I could be asleep here, and the train would just immediately carry on until it ran into something. It's a little troubling. I mean, it's even got cruise control. That's what the little flashing red C down by my speedometer is. It's I don't know, it's kind of like, actually it's even easier than driving a car on the you know, on a major highway or interstate or whatever. You don't even have to steer this thing. Let's see, I've done a couple runs on a lot of the Northeast Corridor in Train Sim. I haven't done the entire length of it that they replicate here. They run the spur from Philadelphia to New York. So, I mean, I haven't done that whole run, but I've been able to point out a couple little Easter eggs in the route. I mean, I mentioned the one where the scenery isn't quite accurate, particularly around Newark, Elizabeth, and of course New York. There is scenery around New York City, but the way the approach into Penn Station is, you come through the rail tunnel and then you're in New York. But the trains, and for those of you who have been to Penn Station, you know the trains come in under street level. So in terms of scenery, I mean, even in real life, when I've gone into Penn Station many times, you can't really see anything. If you happen to look out your window and look up just at the right moment, yeah, you can see some buildings and some traffic lights, but for the most part, there's nothing to see when you're on the approach to Penn Station. And of course, everything's pitch black when you're in the tunnel anyway. Here's another Acela. Now, in some free roam scenarios, I have been able to get the Acela up to over 140 miles an hour. So, I mean, this thing still has some speed left in it, but I haven't run into any speed limits above 120 yet. I remember in Microsoft Train Simulator, that old game released in 2001, the speed limit on their version of the Northeast Corridor, which ran from Philadelphia to Washington, D.C., they had you doing 135 at one point, but I don't know if that's the case at this section of the line, or if that was even the case then in that spur, but MSTS was not noted for its realism. I was reading a review of it last night, and there are actually quite a few bugs that, you know, on second thought, yeah, I did run into them quite a lot, so I can definitely say I'm happier with this game. Really, there's not a whole lot for a driver to do around here, other than just to pay attention to the signals and speed limits. I often wondered, I mean, you know, I'm not in this world at all, but I've often wondered what it's actually like to drive trains, in terms of, you know, what does an engineer have to do? I mean, on the face of it, it looks like it would be pretty easy, to be perfectly honest, only because, well, you're following a track, so you don't have to worry about steering, you don't have to worry about navigating, really. You gotta pay attention to signals, you gotta pay attention to speed limits. Obviously, you gotta pay attention to what's going on board your train, but I don't know, it seems like it almost seems like driving a bus would be more demanding, only because you have to pay attention to traffic and all that kind of things. I mean, yeah, those things exist on train tracks too, but you have signals to tell you what to do and when to do it for the most part. I mean, I'm sure it's a lot more intricate than that. I mean, I've never talked to anybody who's driven a train, so I honestly don't know what it's actually like. So I'm not trying to insult anybody's profession whatsoever, but I'm more so curious, because on the face of it, it looks very simple. And I mean, it's probably largely because trains today seem to be automated in a lot of respects. Just like cars have become more automated in so many aspects, it looks like trains are that way as well. But that being said, I don't know how safe I would feel if I ever got on board a train that did not have a driver. Like a lot of, I've been reading about proposed maglev systems. I mean, they have one in Shanghai, China. I don't know if there's a driver on board that thing. I mean, it doesn't even have wheels, let alone a driver, but I'm not sure how I would feel about being on a train that didn't have somebody sitting up front watching what was going on. There is just something to be said about having a human being in charge. not sure what the rules are about sounding the bell or the horn on this line. There are no level crossings, so I don't see any need to sound the horn. And actually, this early in the morning, people would probably get pretty upset with you, so... But yeah, this thing does have a pretty loud horn. Signals are still all clear. We're coming into, I guess this would be the Elizabeth area. Speed limit goes up again in a mile to 120 miles an hour, so we'll be accelerating. Actually, no, isn't the Rahway station around here? I don't know. I used to live up in Woodbridge, Rahway, that area, so I mean, I'm familiar with this stuff, but again, it doesn't say... This is New Brunswick, okay. It doesn't say much. I mean, yeah, I'm a local. I know these places, but it doesn't say much for the scenery because I can't recognize them at all. I guess it's supposed to be the Raritan River or something. I don't know. But, all right, we got a brief period to accelerate again as we go into the 120 mile an hour zone, but in 1.5 miles we drop down to 100. So I'll take this little bit of opportunity to speed up, and then, you know, we're going to have to slow it down and even apply the brakes, so... Actually, right now, we're going to have to start slowing down, and we're even braking, so... We got 0.85 miles to get down to 100 miles an hour. We're doing 105. Off the brakes now. We'll let gravity do the rest. Here's 100 miles an hour, and cruise control. We still have 20.5 miles before we get to Newark. And that's another train coming up. Is that an Acela or? That's a normal one. What station is this? There was no sign over there. And 1.25 miles before the limit goes down to 90. Further goes down to 80 in 1.5 miles. So I got the picture. We're gradually slowing down for some reason as we approach somewhere. Alright, so 90, cruise control, good. A lot of traffic here on the line. We are passing trains every couple of minutes. We slow down to 80 in 1/2 mile, and then it goes back up to 110 before it goes back down to 90. So, you tell me what's going on. I guess it's because of these curves. I mean, I wouldn't want to take these at any really high speed. This thing would probably flip over. So, because it is tilting quite a bit, even though we're not going all that fast. So, we're down to 80. The limit comes into effect now. Yeah, it's got to be why. Because this thing's tilting a lot. I do have the tilt engaged. Obviously, it is... You know, it's reminding me of the active suspension system on the old Williams FW 14B and 15. Those Formula 1 cars, they would roll into the corners rather than out of them, which is what you'd expect inertia to do. So, just like that, this thing rolls into the corners when you have the tilt enabled, so... Makes sense. This station is what? Metuchen. Yep. I know Metuchen well. This looks nothing like Metuchen. Sorry, developers. Up to 90 miles an hour. Goes up to 110 in another 1.5 miles, so that's a good thing. Set the cruise control a little late, that's why it kind of didn't work, but whatever. Okay. Now in a half a mile we'll be able to do 110 again, probably once we get out of this last curve. Alright, so we just wait for the rear of the train to pass, and there we go. This one, sign, where's the sign? No sign. There was a sign, I couldn't read it. Still couldn't read it. Oh well. So at this point we are a little bit less than 12 minutes out from Newark. Obviously we're going to be slowing down, so that time is probably going to change. I mean, right now it's showing me about 11.5 minutes, but in terms of the ETA down there toward the bottom left of the HUD. But see, I'm scheduled to be there at 7:17, so at this point I'm running a full minute behind schedule. But we're 12 miles away. As long as we can maintain this speed, we'll be making up time, which is a good thing. But obviously, once we get closer into the station, the limits are going to drop. I know by the time we get around the airport, we'll be passing through the airport. That station is before Newark Penn. So by the time we get to the airport, I think we pass through there at like 70, something like that. So I'm going to take advantage of the high-speed running now. So no idea what that station was. Didn't sound the bell because we were nowhere near the platform, but still all clear, and they're still all clear a mile up ahead as well. Let's see. Some generic oil tanks around here. Yeah, I can see that. Particularly whenever you're on the New Jersey Turnpike coming up through this area. There are a lot of oil refineries and oil tanks, gas tanks, those kinds of things. So yeah, there are some real-world scenery cues, but they are only cues. They're not exactly high fidelity, like I said. I can use this time to show you around the Acela cab a little bit more. Here's the other side. I don't know who would sit here. I don't know if there are normally two people involved with operating the train. Obviously, you don't have any driving controls up here. You've got the horn and the emergency brake. And that's about it. So if you're sitting in this seat, apparently all you could do is make a lot of noise and stop quickly. So, and the limit goes down to 55 miles an hour in 1.5 miles. So we're throttling back. Braking now. harder. See the G meter on the left-hand side of the HUD there. Jumps forward and back as I apply and release the brakes. Cruise. And then in 1.5 miles, limit goes up to 100, so. Probably because this corner coming up looks rather tight, so. Track speed is 55. Not sure if anybody could explain to me the difference between track speed and signal speed. You see the red number 55 in the lower right of the dashboard there. But signal speed, the window just above it, is blank, so I'm not entirely sure what that means. I'm pretty sure signal speed has something to do with the maximum permissible speed in terms of what the signals are telling you, if it's all clear or not. Track speed, though, I'm not sure what that means. Does that mean the maximum speed the track can accommodate? I don't know. But yeah, these rather tight corners. I mean, tight is a relative term. Things are a lot tighter for trains. This is Elizabeth. This actually does look quite a lot like the Elizabeth station, so. Quarter mile, and then we get back up to speed. A little bit of news of real-world politics. Apparently the president's going to deliver a statement on Ukraine. Perfectly honest with you, the president has no business talking about Ukraine. I mean, you can argue whether or not what happened in Crimea was fair, was it democratic, was it such and such. But there's been a vote. Whether or not it was a fair vote is up for interpretation, but there was a vote, and it came to almost 97% in favor of joining Russia. So, sorry, Mr. President, but you and your predecessors seem to be really, really hell-bent on spreading freedom, and here's something that happened via a democratic process, and you don't like it. Funny how that works. Approaching Newark Airport, and as I was talking about before, the limit is right around 70 miles an hour, so. New Jersey Transit usually stops here, but I guess Amtrak does too, because I could totally see people using Amtrak as a link from getting from wherever they live to the airport to go to places uncharted, but. Now we're 2.5 miles away from Newark Penn, which is our first stop. And looks like now we're only going to be 32 seconds late, so that's okay. Track speed is 70. Here's where you got to pay attention to track speeds, because it drops down, and the speed limit doesn't drop, but it will take points off of you for speeding. So I'm guessing that has something to do with the track limits, whatever. So I'm just letting the train coast now. I know we go down to like 45 around here, so I'm actually going to start braking it. I'll just let it coast for a little bit. Little throttle. Okay, maybe we're not going to let it coast for a little bit. But we do go down to 35 miles an hour in 0.7 miles, so. We are losing time, but half a mile to the 35 zone. Throttling back. Let it gradually come down to the speed limit. Maybe we'll have to hit a little bit of brakes because we only have a quarter mile now to drop another 10 miles an hour. And this train is fairly efficient in terms of carrying its momentum, so yeah, we'll bleed off some speed on the brakes here. We'll switch it back to isolate. Coming up on the platform. Again, I don't know what the rules are about the bell and the horn and that kind of stuff. So, I don't know, it just sounds like a smart thing to do. Probably making a mess of this, but whatever. Right. And we just rolled to a stop. And we only pulled in 29 seconds late. So, yay us. Use this opportunity now to go outside. Trying to maintain realism. I didn't come out of the cab view throughout our whole run thus far. So yeah, see the back of the train. Yeah, we're well inside the platform. So that's a good thing. And now we're going to be pulling out, so. Alright, timeliness bonus, plus 450. Nice. So. Good morning, passengers. Welcome aboard the Acela Express, non-stop to New York Penn. We will be coming in on track 11 for your information. Thank you for choosing Amtrak. Alright, limits up to 60. Again, I am just a little wary of exceeding 45, because in the quick drive scenarios I've done, when I come around this point of the track, it is coming the other way, approaching Newark from the southbound side, but whenever I come around this area, it gives me a penalty for speeding, even though you can clearly see the limit is at 60. Really, whenever I exceed 45, like when it gets up to 46, it gives me a penalty, so I don't really understand. So I am just a little wary of it. We'll go back to tilt now. Obviously, once we get up to the 90 zone, I won't worry, but Trainride be okay at this point. Throttle back. Just wait for the rear of the train to pass into the 90-mile-an-hour zone, and then we'll give it the beans. There we go. Cruise control active. No speeding. I don't know why it does that. Alright, so we lost 4 points. But here you can clearly see this scenery does not look like the approach to New York City. At this point you would be seeing docks and whatnot. And they're just not there. Just not there. It looks like, you know, rolling green pastures or something. I can tell you, and anybody who's from New Jersey knows this, this is one of the ugliest parts of the state in terms of landscape. So, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to represent us in a more favorable light, but yeah, this is pretty much an industrial wasteland up here. And approaching this station, this is, the way we say it from where I come from, this is Secaucus. However, there is a typo on the signs around here. They call it Secaucus or something like that. So they didn't quite do their research, or somebody messed up, so yeah. See the signs around here. I want to pause the video while we're passing through those signs. You will see the typo. Yeah. So, yeah. So the next station is Penn. And down here, that is a marshalling yard for New Jersey Transit, but again, they haven't really replicated the scenery. I do like the effects they've done on the water, though. You see the shimmering in the early morning light there. And we're coming in now in the last corner in New Jersey before we come into the tunnel. This area, the geography is pretty accurate, I will say that. But, gotta come down to 60 miles an hour before we enter the tunnel. On. Now we enter the tunnel. We go under the river into New York City. Here's a good opportunity to point out the great lighting effects that they do have in this game. You can see the reflections from the lights up on the roof of the tunnel now into the cab. You can see as we pass by, you can see the light travel through the cab is really, really nicely done. That I will say. And right as we're coming toward the end of the tunnel, the speed limit's going to drop to 15 as we come into the approach to Penn Station. There are a lot of switching points and stuff to pass over, so they really don't want the trains going faster there. And you can see that speed limit approaching now. We're going to switch from tilt back to isolate. So 1.6 miles before we drop to 15 miles an hour. So I'm going to try to maintain our current speed as long as I dare. But actually not too bad detailing in the tunnel. I mean, yeah, it's a tunnel. How detailed can it be? But you've got service platforms on either side. You've got pipes running through the whole length, the signals, and of course the illumination on either side of the roof area there. One mile before we have to bring our speed down to 15. Throttling back. Headed uphill now, so that's a sign that the tunnel is coming to an end. Letting gravity do some of that work for us. Half a mile to our speed restriction. Throttle. You can see the end of the tunnel there. Now a quarter mile. Cruise control. One of the weird things that can happen when you take this train into the city is sometimes you hit a red light in the middle of the tunnel. I've actually been on New Jersey Transit stuck in the tunnel for, one time was about 20 minutes. It was kind of interesting, to say the least. So here we are, Penn Station. Now here's where you look up really quick and see the Empire State Building, that kind of goodness. This is the only open air part of the approach to the station, because obviously we are below street level, as you can see. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of scenery. So it looks like our platform is dead ahead. Better be, otherwise there's going to be a bit of an Acela accident. So, yep, good. And we're just very slowly coming in. We'll go down all the way to the end of the platform. We're due here at 7:31, so we are a little bit ahead of schedule, so that's good. And that's it. Welcome to Penn Station. So, that's about all I've got for this little video here. If you have made it to the end, congratulations. You win the eternal admiration and gratitude of me. So, yeah, have fun with that. Until then, I don't know. Whatever. So long, everyone. Thanks for watching.